Okay, welcome to the live stream for October 17th, 2018. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome. If you are returning here, welcome. James, hello. Hooray. Lovely Cat, Sam, Slavic Princess, come on me popcorn, bonsoir. Missietta, Eileen, Jennifer, welcome, welcome, welcome. So you guys might notice that I have some lovely artwork here behind me. Thank you, Katie she says, yes, beautiful artwork. This comes from, well, this was part of what I was doing over the weekend. I went to New Jersey and then Philadelphia for this art show, Healthy Loves art show. And it was phenomenal. I have a short video that I need to upload still to kind of show you guys more of the artwork. But if you're curious about it, you'd like to see what she does, I just love her stuff. You can find her at wholeheartedarts.com. That's whole, W-H-O-L-E, hearted, H-E-A-R-T-E-D, arts, A-R-T-S.com. So let's see, these paintings here, this one is called Freedom. And it's just representative of being free from abuse and kind of rediscovering yourself and just that blissful state of being, which I just love this one. This one down below, I don't know how well you can see it. It looks like this alien figure. This alien guy is probably my favorite one. And it's called Who Am I? And it really, I think, speaks so perfectly to that space where a person, right when they're either going through abuse or right when they're out of it, and they don't know who they are anymore. And it's just this realization of, oh my goodness, like I've lost so much of myself. I don't even know like what my wants or needs or thoughts or feelings are. So let me get out of the way so you can see that one. And you just feel like an alien being, like to other people as well as to yourself. I just thought that was so profound. So yes, check out her artwork. It's just fantastic. Okay. Oh, Lovely Cat. That's pretty intense. Lovely Cat, my goodness, says, sometimes I feel that I want to kill my little brother because I'm afraid that he will be abused like me, just to avoid the narcissist's hurtful comments. I know I'm sick. Well, I guess I would say I would try to channel. It sounds like that, even though we're talking about doing something that's really violent and horrific, and you've got like a crying face on here, it sounds like you're feeling really helpless about all of this and about what's happening to him. I would encourage you to reach out to both him as well as to other people that can potentially help. So that might be doing an anonymous call to Child Protective Services. It might be talking to him about letting him know, like, you know, I went through this too, and like helping him come up with ways of coping. If he's in school, maybe contacting a school counselor. There are ways to help that are a lot more constructive. And I can tell that you do care. So I hope that you can find other people in your area that can help him get out of this situation, or that can be there to listen, and that can help him with some coping mechanisms to get through this. So, okay, let me scroll up here real quick too. Oh, I wanted to talk a little bit about the art show real quick. Let me just go back to that while things are kind of getting settled in the chat here. I I was able, there were a few people that came out, or like a handful of people that came out. And it was just, I just wanted to say it was phenomenal getting to meet you guys. And it was just the coolest thing ever. And I was so humbled and honored that people came from so far away. And even those that came from within an hour, the fact that anybody would drive an hour, I still was just humbled and honored by that. So I just really enjoyed seeing you. Some of the people that came out, I saw Kevin, he was there. I've been seeing Kevin on these chats for a long time now, and it was just so cool to put a face to a name. And I hope to be able to do this on a more regular basis. This was definitely getting out of a comfort zone for me with meeting people. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you guys for coming out, for supporting Healthy Love in her art show, and for taking time out of your life to come say hi and meet me and just everything. It was really cool. Okay, let's see here. Karen says, Dana, come to Northern California, please. Well, we'll see. We'll see. But maybe we'll add that to the list. Angie and I were talking yesterday about doing some sort of meet and greet in St. Louis. So I don't know when that would be, but I think that might be the next stop. But California would always be great. Of course, I'm in Michigan, so anytime I can get out of the snow from like January to April, I am all for that. Oh, Jennifer, thank you. She says, if I ever meet you someday, I will cry for sure. Happy tears, of course. Well, I will tell you, there was a lot of crying. I cried. I haven't cried this much in a very well, since the house fire. But these were happy tears and not stressed out, overwhelmed tears. But yeah, lots of tears. Sable asks, did I lose my Mola art in the fire? No, that is the artwork. As far as I know, they're working towards restoring it. So we should be able to get all of that back, but it's still, they're not even close to being done with the house. Like they just finished the electrical and plumbing, I think today, but there's still no floor. There's, drywall is all torn up. We have no cabinets. We have no toilet. We have no appliances. We have no floor. We have no heating and cooling system. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done before we start getting stuff back. Slavic Princess asks, Dana, how are you feeling today, especially with regards to your healing journey? There's ups and downs. And I think the biggest challenge with everything that I have right now is with kind of painful new realizations. So, now that I'm more aware of like boundaries and standards and deal breakers and what it looks like to be assertive and all of these things, it's just this continual practice with all of these different skills. And I don't know, with awareness kind of comes responsibility, I guess, like to use those skills. And that's just its own challenge. And I've had a handful of situations in my life lately where those skills have really been tested. And, sometimes I feel like I do okay. And then sometimes I feel like I really drop the ball. And when I really drop the ball or don't handle things the way that I would like to, that can get really discouraging. So it's just trying to stay positive and to just keep moving forward and learning the lessons I can and, addressing situations in the best way I can. So, but yeah, that's the biggest challenge right now. As far as like thinking back to everything, well, I don't think so much about anything that's really happened like that doesn't preoccupy my thoughts anymore. It's just a different level of like understanding how the pieces go together. So I've had a lot, especially after reading these Pia Melody books, like a lot more realizations about different patterns in my own behavior and how those patterns had been surfacing throughout my life. And I hadn't realized that before. And so I don't know, there's just this mix, like you have to kind of grieve the loss of what was. And I think realizing too that a lot of my life with the way that I'd been interacting with people was in this like fantasy of who I wanted them to be, or like I just was very gullible, but at the same time I was not, even if they weren't manipulative or abusive, I was still not seeing them clearly. I was seeing them as this fantasy person. Like Pia Melody talks about that in the book, I think it was the Love Addiction book, of just not, we're seeing the love addict, even though I kind of feel like I went back and forth and maybe still go back and forth between like love addiction and love avoidant. But being addicted to this fantasy person. So I think since I've really fully understood that, I feel like I'm seeing people a lot more clearly. And that's been an ongoing process. I mean, that really started before the Pia Melody book, but after reading that book, like that made a lot of things a lot more clear. I don't know. There's always something, isn't there? Yeah, and Slavic Princess says a psychological healing journey isn't always meant to be pleasant. Yes, no, it's not. Oh, that's right. And hi, Missy Etta. It's good to see you. She says, Dana, don't forget to ask or have people say question to help you. It really helps. So Missy was one of the people that I met over the weekend, and she had mentioned on, I think it was Chris Gardina's channel, that what they do over there is they have people type out the word question in all capital letters and post it in the chat. And then that way, as I'm scrolling through, it'll catch my attention. So we can try that. Let's try it tonight. Missouri Cowboy says, yeah, me too. Seeking balance, or as Pia Melody says, moderation. Yeah, that's such, there's so many skills. There's so many new skills to learn. And, I think it really is just a lifelong process. It's like the whole like Maslow's pyramid, I think everybody, if you're growth oriented, you're focused on climbing up that pyramid to self-actualization. And I think everybody that's growth oriented is somewhere on that path. And a lot of people never even start down that path. They're just busy focused on either surviving, or or they just never achieve that level of awareness that things could be different. And so even though there is all of this pain and discomfort that comes with trying to become a better person and to become more self-actualized, I would rather experience the pain of that growth than the pain of stagnation. Oh, thanks, Chris. Chris says, hey, Miss Dana, you rock. I'm reading Start Here and I love it. Oh, that's so good to hear. Thank you. Hey, Dandelion Greens. She was also somebody else that I met over the weekend, which was so super cool. It was just wonderful. Just wonderful to meet you guys so, so much. Okay, let's see. Seafin says, I have a question about fortressing. I never trusted people unless they came through someone else I trusted already. I stayed with my narcissistic ex because I didn't think I was capable of finding relationship. Well, I think there's a learning curve to understanding all of this. And I was watching a Pia Melody video the other day, and she was talking about boundaries with being, not having any at all. And then kind of the opposite end of that, which would be fortressing, and how I really feel like it just takes practice. It's getting your sea legs with all of that. And I think it's common for a person when they have no boundaries, they don't know how to be appropriately intimate with other people. They don't know how to trust effectively. And so when they get really hurt, and here's a Pia Mellody quote that I love. She said something along the lines of, intimacy without boundaries is chaos. And I just thought, you nailed it, lady. Like that is so right on. And so when there is that chaos, and when we are so hurt because we didn't have boundaries, or we didn't have strong enough boundaries, then people tend to go to the opposite end, and they do fortressing, and they shut down. And, and it just takes a while. I think kind of the antidote to that is just learning to trust yourself. Because here's the thing, even if manipulators have targets and abusive people have targets, and so even though they might be totally fine with your friends or other people vouch for them, that doesn't mean that they're 100% like your person, or that they're going to be 100%, or that they're just even going to be a decent person in general. So it's one way to vet people, to see like, okay, do the people close to me kind of think that this is an A-OK person? But that's just one kind of filter that we need to pass that person through. And really like opening up slowly, taking our time, getting to see them in a wide variety of situations. How do they handle conflict? How do they handle stress? What kind of communication do they have? How do they handle important information that you share with them? If you open up to them, do they then get defensive, or do they become attacking, or do they use that information against you? It really, I feel, goes back to that whole Brene Brown concept of the marble jar, where, with every kind of appropriate response, there's that marble of trust that's dropped in. And then once that jar and that's how trust is earned. It's earned kind of one marble at a time. And once you're able to kind of get some better boundaries around trusting another person, it makes it so much easier, because the old you, or the old us without boundaries, when we're looking to another person to fulfill the fantasy, basically, like, I need you to basically love me, and to treat me a certain way all of the time. And that's not real life. And so then when we realize, we start seeing the humanity of the other person. And if they do anything that's hurtful, now that we have the skill of being assertive and having that communication, then it can be addressed. And then if that doesn't work, then we can start distancing ourselves from that person. Like, we have skills. Whereas before, if a person doesn't have boundaries, they have to rely on basically coping or hoping, and coping with an intolerable or abusive situation, or hoping that it's going to change, are not good action strategies. So when you empower yourself and you realize that you do have control, like that there is so much more that you have control over, it's just such an absolute game changer. Okay, I saw Roy on here, so I'll acknowledge him too. He was there over the weekend. Roy, it was great getting to meet you and your neighbor. So thank you for stopping by. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll. And JJFX says, I read your takeaways from the book Necessary Endings, and the 3 types of people: the wise person, the fool, and then the evil person. And says, I realized that I am the poster boy for the fool. Repeated pattern, not just event. It's sad. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, like where I'm at in my stage of healing. And I think everybody gets to this point where you do start waking up to these patterns, and you're like, oh my goodness. And it's so difficult to just acknowledge and to sit with. And it rocks your world. And it is. I think it can really lead to a lot of like depression and anxiety and just sadness, profound sadness of, oh my gosh, this is the pattern that I'd been unknowingly repeating in my life. And I think there is that time where you have to just kind of mourn the loss of what you hoped might be, or kind of what could have been. It's a difficult thing to do, but you're not alone in that. So I get it. There were many times in my life where I was definitely in the fool role and not realizing it. But you know what? When we know different, we can start doing different. And then that's when things change. But I think that's the hard part with change. It's hard for any of us, I think, to be aware that we're doing something that's not working for us. Like, it really takes for a person to hit rock bottom to get out of that comfort zone of consistency and to venture off into the unknown. And especially when you're talking about like relationship dynamics, because it just changes the way that you interact with the whole world. And it oftentimes changes a lot of the relationships that you have with people in your inner circle. And sometimes a lot of those relationships just have to end. And that's even more painful, especially if a person has all of these kind of unaddressed abandonment issues, and then to kind of heap on more loss after that. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. Thank you, little Britches, for the live stream donation. I appreciate it. Oh, these names. You guys crack me up. Okay, let me scroll down here. Oh my goodness. Oh, little Britches says, 3 years ago, I saw your channel, and if it weren't for you, I would have jumped off my balcony. You saved my life, and I just wanted to say thank you and know that you do help. My goodness. Wow. Thank you. I'm glad that this makes such a profound positive impact in your life and in the lives of other people. And just real quick, I think for anybody else that's struggling with feeling suicidal, please know that you're not alone. These relationships are incredibly painful. The endings are incredibly painful. And please just know that this darkness, it's not always this intense, and it doesn't last forever. And that many, if not most, of your best days are still ahead of you. So please know that. And please reach out. There's suicide hotlines. There's a text line. These are free. It's 24 hours a day. If you're here in the United States, please reach out and get some resources, because I've been there. I totally know how low and scary of a place that can be. And there is life after this. Yeah, Healthy Love says, it gets better, I promise you. Yeah. So we are glad that you are still around. Yeah, Camilla says, I truly appreciated meeting Healthy Love and Dana. And if anyone hasn't checked out Healthy Love's art, please do so. She is amazing. I agree. I think she is amazing as well. So wholeheartedarts.com is her website. I will put that in the chat here. Wholehearted, HEARTED, arts.com. I hope that, yep, there we go. And we are doing a book with these paintings that will probably be out, I would say, I don't know. We were thinking January 2019. But then I had a realization today when I was listening to some Pia Melody, that there's certain parts that I'd really like to rewrite in the book and to make it more empowering and speak more towards healing. So the book we're working on has I forget, 67 paintings of hers in it. So it has the painting, and then there's a section from her that's like an artist note that explains the painting and like the colors and the imagery and what it speaks to. And then there's like a few paragraphs from me about kind of more of like what it is. So each topic. So here's another painting, for example. This one is called Control. And to a person who didn't know what this was, it looks like a really romantic, loving embrace, but it's actually it's the enmeshment between this man and this woman, and just and his arms kind of wrapping around her, and it's all about control. So, for example, there would be a painting like that. There would be an artist note. Then there would be a section on there from me about kind of how control plays into manipulation and abuse. And then there's a section called Old Me versus New Me. And so Healthy Love and I took turns writing about our own experiences, like how the old us viewed this and then how the new us views this. So it really speaks to, the goal was to try to speak to people at different stages of understanding and healing. And then the book is divided into different sections. So there's like awareness of abuse. There is kind of understanding, or like rising from, the book is going to be called Rising from the Ashes, but rising from the ashes, and then healing from abuse. And so the paintings are chunked in these different categories and all that. So yeah, I think it'll be really, really helpful. And then there's sections in there too, some of her paintings, because we really wanted to present, we wanted to kind of break the paradigm that it's just men that are abusive. So there's paintings in there that are with women as abusive, or women that are manipulating. There's sections in there that talk about just the full range of experience, about who can be abusive, who can be a target, how this kind of stuff goes down. So, okay, let me scroll up here. Yeah, Farah says, wow, that's amazing art and meaning. Yeah, I love her work. She's so talented and it's so powerful. And part of the reason I think art can be so powerful, and this is something Healthy Love and I were talking about before, is in, what is it? The Body Keeps the Score. I think it was that book. Bessel van der Kolk talks about, when a person goes through trauma, there's a certain area of their brain called the Broca's area that shuts down. And that's the communication centers. So here you have a person who's been traumatized, especially with abuse or manipulation. They're having a difficult time articulating what they went through to begin with, because if you're not up to speed with all of the vocabulary and everything surrounding this, you're fumbling in the dark trying to explain your experience. Other people are looking at you like you're from Mars, And so because manipulation and abuse is already so confusing, and then you have these parts of your brain that are just shutting down, one of the ways to bypass that is through art. And art allows that emotional expression and connection. And so it really does. My goodness, there were so many times going through these different paintings of hers and then seeing them in person where it just hits you like nothing else, because it's like, that is the emotion. Like, that is what I felt. Like, that's why I love this alien guy so much. Like, that's exactly how I felt. I felt like a moth trapped on the outside of a glass, trying to get into the light where everybody else was. And like, nobody could, I didn't exist. And I just felt so foreign to myself and so far away from, my old life and like where I wanted to be. So I don't know. I can't say enough good things about her work. It's just fantastic. And James says, I'm on the website now and wow, talented AF, yo. Yes, I agree. Okay, let me scroll down. Con P asked and then deleted it. Asked whose art are you showing us? That's Healthy Love. Wholeheartedarts.com. Yes, I agree. Slavic Princess says, Camilla, my theory is if you love yourself enough to always adhere to what your intuition tells you about any given person you meet, you will feel less violated at all times. I agree. Absolutely. And this was something else that you've probably heard me talk about, is one of the challenges is getting rid of this need for concrete proof. And so many of us, especially if we are holding on to this fantasy that this is, Pia Melody describes it as like that, quote unquote, like that one person who's going to love us unconditionally, that's going to just, it's like, and it's kind of this codependent or love addiction type reaction of, as soon as they're in my life, then I can start living. And so then you're holding your breath, waiting for this one perfect person. And because if we're caught up in this fantasy of looking for another person that's going to fill this, and of course nobody can, because people aren't perfect, right? Not to say that an abusive person that's workable, because that's not. But if we're looking for this one perfect person, and they're coming on strong, they're doing all of this love bombing and this mirroring, and they're creating this soulmate connection, that can be really hard to walk away from when a person is feeling very kind of unloved or, kind of emotionally starved out. So it's really difficult to tune into your intuition and to walk away from that. But, and without feeling like I need concrete proof that they are indeed a problem, because I don't want to lose this amazing thing. But if your intuition is screaming at you, telling you run, or I'm picking up funny vibes, like I just don't like this. If you can tighten up your standards to just be like, you know what, I don't do perpetual confusion. I don't do crazy making. I don't do anything that's going to negatively impact my sanity. So even if this person is absolutely amazing, if me being with them is going to make me feel anxious and unhinged and insecure and distrusting, then it's not worth it. So you just have to walk away. And over time, like there is a time in healing too, where you do have to I feel like have to kind of bench yourself and regroup and learn to trust yourself, learn to trust your judgment, realize that you set the pace, that if something feels off, it's okay to step back to any degree that you want, in order to where you don't feel that way, where you can just feel safe and secure and comfortable. And that just takes practice. But I think any of us can look back at times in our life where we've had this funny feeling about a person. And I'll tell you, I realized this the other day. I think more often than not, when a person comes across, if you're feeling really like anxious and unhinged and uncertain about this new person, but you can't pinpoint why, and you're feeling like, is it me or is it them? I don't want to lose out on this amazing person. I think where all of this introspection and uncertainty comes from, it tends to be you're picking up on insincerity. So especially if there's like a lot of charm and they're wanting to move fast. So a deeper part of you is picking up on that. And the more you get in tune with like understanding boundaries and all of this stuff, a lot of the more like major red flag stuff becomes instant deal breakers. So I see this time and time again. I would have asked the same questions too in the support group, but I see this a lot in the support group where people will come in and they're like, well, this new person I've been dating, they just raged at me, or they like kind of did some stuff where it's like, whoa, wait, like that's pretty extreme stuff, like right out of the gate. And for a lot of people, that would just be deal breaker stuff. So you know what I'm saying? Like it just takes a little while to navigate, but the more you can move in that direction of just keeping peace in your life, the more this like quote unquote squirrely behavior or like red flag kind of stuff, it just becomes deal breaker stuff. Okay. Trappa says, I still catch myself being stuck in the fantasy of my abuser years later. I need to remind myself what a terrible human being they really are, and that those nice moments were not real in the least. Yeah. And I do think that reminding ourselves is an important part of it. And just realizing like, there is no happy, healthy, functional relationship possible with an angry, abusive, dysfunctional person. It's like the saying goes, no matter where you go, there you are. And if that's who they are, they're going to keep bringing that self wherever they go. So it's not like they're going to change for the next person. Like, this is how they handle frustration and conflict and their ability to relate to other people. And it's a very controlling mindset. This stuff isn't an easy fix. And that's even if they wanted to fix it. So if they don't want to fix it, they're a million miles away from changing. Yes, healthy love. I agree. She says, anything extreme is not mature. Moderation is my new challenge. Yes, absolutely. I agree. There was a gal who'd asked a question in my YouTube comments the other day about love bombing, and had gotten caught up with this guy who had really love bombed her, and then he turned out to be abusive. And so now she, kind of found her way to a lot of these types of channels. And she was really doubting herself because she's like, well, all my friends tell me that all guys just do this, that they love bomb you and they finesse you. And how do I figure out, like, when it's a good guy who's love bombing versus like an abusive guy that's love bombing? And the reality is, love bombing is always finessing. It's always insincere. And it's not, they might, anybody that it's immature. Anybody that's moving that quick and is telling you everything that you want to hear and all of this kind of stuff, they might even really mean it in the moment, but they're seeing the fantasy of you. Like, they're not seeing you clearly. And this is why it's so important for us we have to just always set the pace. That's what healthy people do. Like, they set the pace. They don't let other people, they don't jump into the whirlwind. They realize, like, everybody looks good especially during the first 90 days, and then you start to really, it's like the job interview. Everybody looks great at first. They're on their best behavior. They're trying to sell you what they think that you want, right? It's like an interview, but then they get comfortable, and then who they really are starts showing up. And it's the same thing with dating. And so maturity is realizing, like, that this is not, it's not, there's no foundation underneath it. It's just going to take time to get to know another person, and then to determine if they really are this amazing person, that we have this amazing connection with them. But that's not the way the rest of the world normally works. So it can be a little confusing. Right. Erica says, yeah, in the first few months, you're dating someone's representative. Yes, absolutely. CFIN says, does anyone have old friends who are not problematic, but you just don't feel like you connect anymore after this? Yeah, I can speak for me. Yes, absolutely. A lot. I think everything in my life changed after this. Even people that weren't problematic. I think it's like going through any type of really profound experience. It's going to just change you, no matter what it is. I mean, it could be an abusive relationship. It could be traveling to a new place. It could be going to college. It could be going to, I don't know, starting a different career. Like, any type of like major transitional event is just going to really change the dynamic with the different people in your life, because you have this whole new experience, So, yeah, it can be difficult to kind of continue on as like business as usual in those kinds of relationships, because things are so different. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Trappa says, I was self-righteously thinking I was making them a better person by putting up with their abuse. Yes, well, and one of the best quotes I heard that speaks to that was a TED Talk by a woman who was in an abusive relationship. And she said, I never thought of myself as an abused woman. I thought of myself as a really strong woman in love with a deeply troubled man. And I just thought yep, that's exactly how that goes. Nobody thinks of themselves as being abused. It's sort of like, oh, I need to be able to somehow get them to see the light. They're deeply troubled. I just need to get through to them. I need to get them to understand, especially if they're pulling on your strings and they're saying things like, I need you, only you can show me with your love. I know I can change, like these kinds of things. If they're feeding in to those emotions, it can be really difficult to leave. Okay, let's see. Kristen asks, what is love bombing? Love bombing it's a term that's generally associated with cults. And I guess more so now with like online dating scammers, but it's where you have a manipulative person that bombs another person with like attention and affection, or generally in the form of like consistent communication. And it can feel amazing at first. Depending on where, let me take that back. Depending on where you are with your boundaries and how you understand this behavior. To a healthy person, love bombing, or as Pia Melody would call them, like a more mature or functional person, love bombing comes across as insincere and immature, because it is. To a person that's lonely or starved out or still holding on to the fantasy of this perfect person, love bombing feels intoxicating. And excuse me, it feels like you've met your soulmate. It feels like the fish are jumping in the boat, kind of a feeling. Like you're not having to do a whole lot of effort. All of a sudden, this other person just comes out of nowhere, and they are just so quick to be so certain that you are the one for them. And they're very quick to make you their whole world. They want to talk to you all the time. They're telling you all these amazing things. And again, for a person that's been starved out emotionally, either as a child or like in a previous relationship, and now they're finding this, it just feels so right. But it's a big manipulative ploy, and it creates this false soulmate type of connection with the target. And with online dating scammers, it's a ploy used to lure them in so they can start hitting them up for money. Yeah, well said. Trappa says, I have a totally different life now. My whole outlook has changed. It seemed like a disaster at first, but now I see it was the universe sending a flood to wipe my world clean. Really well said. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you can see it that way. And I'm glad that you have a totally different life now. That's awesome. Kiara says, Dana, I feel like there's two parts of me. The part that wants to heal and keep myself safe and doesn't care what people think. And then the people pleaser that just wants to be liked and cater to others. Is this the norm? Well, it sounds like you're in this kind of transitional space. So when I was talking earlier about kind of getting your sea legs with all of this, I think what you're saying really speaks to that. So it's kind of like you're straddling two different worlds, and the boat's rocking back and forth, and you're trying to figure out kind of where it takes a little while to kind of get that equilibrium back. And a lot of it's just practicing these skills. It's getting in tune with yourself. It's getting out of this anxiety, and just change is synonymous with turbulence. Really, it's a disequilibrium kind of state of being. It's everything just is really just gets real shooken up, and that's just part of it. And so, yeah, it takes a little while for everything to kind of calm down and figure out, okay, how do I balance these different sides of myself, where part of me is really lonely, but then part of me wants to fortress, or part of me wants to handle things assertively, but part of me really wants to just people please. Part of me wants to be loved. Part of me or wants to be in a relationship. Part of me is terrified of being in a relationship. There's all kinds of these very like polar, like opposing forces at play. And it takes a little while to just kind of navigate that. But I would say that that's normal. Con pieces. I'm trying to get my sea legs, but right now I think one is a peg leg. Yeah, I can understand that feeling too. Yeah, Kara says, I always felt like I was two people too. And that makes sense. It's feeling like you're in two different worlds. And Kara says, Dana, it's like both sides of me want to keep me safe, but one in a toxic way. Yes. And so what you're talking about, that toxic way is what's comfortable. So if that's been the default, and I mean, my goodness, girl, I'm with you on that. I think anybody that's learning new skills and a new way of like understanding and relating to the world goes through that. It's this constant balance between kind of that consistency and the comfort zone of what we know, or being kind of thrust out into the world and learning these new skills and actually changing. And change is always difficult and it's always scary. And it's normal for a person to want to run back to what's safe. This is why these skills take practice. So just knowing that you want to do different isn't the same as actually doing different. And even when we do start doing different, odds are we're not going to handle it perfectly right out of the gate. And so there's a lot of this kind of like, post game day analysis that goes on where, you handle a situation or you deal with it in a certain way. And then you generally will take some time and think about like, oh, that's interesting. I found myself slipping back into people pleasing, or I really wish I would have brought up X, Y, Z, or I wish I would have handled things a little differently. And it's a lot of this learning part comes from that post game day analysis where we're just examining our behavior. And here's the challenge with that too, is it can be really easy to start spiral into judgment and shame and anger with ourselves for not doing something different. But you've probably heard me talk about this before, but like it really does help to try to replace that judgment with curiosity, because the judgment's not really going to do any good. It really isn't. So if you can replace it with curiosity of like, okay, let me think about this. Like, what behavior did I have that was people pleasing? And why did I kind of go back to that? And how could I have handled it differently? So you're just kind of thinking it through. Okay. Wonder Woman, yes, says, anyone else here, try to keep it together at work all day and then just start wailing in the car on the way home. My stomach is a ball of tension and I'm in this sunken place all day and then I cry. Yeah, it's hard. It's a really emotional time. When I was going through all my stuff, I was working at a domestic violence shelter. And there were many, many times where it was just one staff. So like I might be the only person that was there for 12 hours. And I, like I had generally, I don't know, 12 to 14 women and children that were in there that were in crisis and that were going through something very similar to what I was going through. And they needed me to be strong. Like there's only so much hysteria or anxiety allowed. Really, like there's only room for so much anxiety allowed between any two people. And oh my goodness, for like the longest time, I would go out there, I would either teach a class or we would do dinner or whatever we were doing. And then I'd go in my office and I would just cry, like sob. And then I'd pull myself together and then I'd go back out there and try to do another group or do whatever it was what we were doing. And then go back in my office and cry and then cry on the way home. So I'd be surprised if other people weren't doing that as well. It's just a really, really, really emotional time. but it doesn't last forever. And I think it can help to just remind yourself, like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel how you feel, you know? And I almost think of it as, and this might even be putting it mildly, but it's like the emotional flu, you know, like you're going through a lot. If the physical flu, you would hopefully like be kind to yourself and just realize, yeah, you know what? I don't feel good. I just want to wear comfy clothes. I'm not going to do as much as I normally do when I'm feeling good. And you just kind of work with where you are. And coming out on the other side of these types of relationships, it's a lot like having like the emotional flu. You just don't feel good. And there's nothing, it just takes a while to heal. And that's okay. Like you are where you are. And I think sometimes thinking of it that way, like it's an emotional flu, and being kind to yourself, like your brain is not going to be as functioning as it was before all of this. And things are going to be a little bit different, and you're not going to have the same amount of energy or the desire to get out and do things. And your body just needs time to just recoup and regather yourself. But it doesn't last forever, and it's okay to take some time. Yeah, Missy Etta says, I feel like I'm never going to stop crying, but I still take baby steps every day. Yeah. Okay, Blue Moon says, question, I have been in fortress mode for many years and really don't think I will ever get out of it. Any suggestions as to how to move forward? I'm not even sure I want to anymore. So, yeah, that's I think a good point you bring up. Like one of the challenges with fortress mode is it can very quickly, or isolating ourselves in any way, shape, or form, can become our new normal. And we might not realize it. And the next thing we know, like years have gone by and we're like, you know what? I don't really have any friends anymore. I don't have any hobbies. I don't really want to do anything. I've gotten used to just staying home alone. And you've probably heard me talk, like I'm a big fan of meetup.com. It's a great way to get out there. It's a very safe way to get out there. There's lots of different groups. And one of the things that I had to do, I still have to kind of do this. I still kind of struggle with the whole fortressing thing. I'm more of an introvert by nature. So it was kind of an easy, slippery slope for me to go on, to just want to be alone. So, but the meetup can be good. So forcing yourself to go to a meetup event like once a week can be a really good thing. And just realizing I need to start building up a life that I really enjoy. And I need to make this a priority, and I need to leave the house and start spending some time with other people, and these kinds of things. It might also be worth going to your doctor and getting checked for depression, because I think that's another one of those things that can very quickly become a person's new normal and not even realize it. Because depression, it's experienced in a wide variety of ways. Some people experience sadness, but some people don't. Some people just experience numbness. Missy was saying crying all the time. These are some symptoms. Fluctuations with sleeping, with eating, with wanting to isolate, not wanting to do anything, these kinds of things. And so sometimes getting on an antidepressant, or kind of discussing, or getting your levels checked, like your B12 and your vitamin D and stuff like this, it does all play a part in it. So just something to think about. Okay, let's see. Jennifer asks, can vitamin D3 cure depression? Well, it can definitely be a low vitamin D can definitely contribute to depression. So it depends on what a person's depression is stemming from. But if vitamin D is it's an important vitamin, and it acts like a hormone in a person's body. And so if you live in areas like I do, like Michigan, where you have a lot of long gray days, or if you're just not going outside that much, your vitamin D level is potentially low. So you will generally start noticing a difference pretty quickly if you start taking vitamin D supplements, like with your energy levels, with how you're feeling in general. Same thing with vitamin B12. So I had my levels checked a few years ago. Mine were fine, but I started taking supplements anyhow, and I noticed a huge difference in my mood. So like, just something to consider, because sometimes the levels don't show up as being off, but your body excretes what it doesn't use, and maybe it's all psychosomatic for me. I don't know, but I feel like I do feel better when I'm doing that. Getting some exercise with depression, 10, 20 minutes, even a walk around the block, these kinds of things, it really does help. It makes a big difference. Kara says, I'm in Michigan too, and I started taking D3, and I do feel there's a difference. Yeah, those light tables can make a difference. If you're near a Planet Fitness gym, most of them now, for like the platinum or whatever membership, it's the $20 a month membership, they have a light booth in there. It's not a tanning booth, it's a light booth. At least they do in Michigan. Maybe they don't have it in California. I don't know. But where you can go in, and it's that helps tremendously with depression if you're experiencing seasonal depression. So going and standing in a light box like that and it's not very long, I think it's like 7 to 10 minutes, makes a huge difference. So I think with mental health in general, very rarely is it one thing. It tends to be kind of a combination of things that make a difference. But sometimes you can find that one thing that makes a huge difference. And then these other things are just icing on the cake, and they can just they can really improve things that much more. Surf Smurf says, I have night terrors a lot as well. I don't sleep until I am literally passing out from exhaustion. Well, and then here's just FYI, something else. If those of you that are struggling with this might be another reason to contact a doctor, is there's medicine out there. It's depending on where you live, it's either called prazosin or prazosin, but it's started off as a blood pressure medication, but another use for it is to treat nightmares caused by PTSD. So it works for the vast majority of people that take it. So that might be something to consider if you're doing what you're doing, where you're like, I stay awake as long as I can, and then when I pass out, it's from exhaustion, and I'm not getting quality sleep. These kinds of things, that might be something to look into as well. Con P says, my doctor will not prescribe any sleep medication. Well, the prazosin or the prazosin isn't a sleep medication. It just helps to stop the nightmares. Okay. Let's see, let me scroll here. Kiara says, Dana, I grew up in an abusive home. Abuse is all I've known. I feel like I'm looking for a light switch that's on the ceiling in a dark room. I don't know what healthy relationships or life feels like. Oh. Well, I know that you are not alone in that there's quite a few people in the chat that I think can really relate to that. I don't know if I've ever really known a healthy relationship or life either, to be honest. And Healthy Love and I were just talking about this today. I think I think it's getting clear on like what you do want, you know, and then you just keep moving in that direction. So like there's certain things that I talk about as far as like standards, which I feel are reasonable. And that's, you know, kind of no active addictions, no abuse, addiction, no adultery, and no really rotten attitude. So that's kind of my main deal breaker kind of stuff. And not that it makes people that are struggling with addiction bad or wrong. It just means when a person is struggling with an addiction, they're struggling with they're preoccupied with their addiction. And it's impossible to be in a healthy relationship with another person when they have that addiction. That addiction is always going to be a barrier between you and them. And so that's the challenge. And so they need to get that like resolved first before intimacy, true intimacy can really happen, because addiction is just, it's a monkey on somebody's back big time. So hold on a second here. My lips are chapped. Much better. So, okay, that's what I would say would be some deal breakers. As far as like healthy stuff goes, healthy relationships, I feel more often than not, they feel nourishing. They feel safe. There's going to be conflict, because there's conflict in anything, but it's how that conflict is handled that makes all of the difference. So there's this trust that's been built over time with appropriate behavior. There's, I think, a sense of connection. There's, you leave that dynamic, whatever it is, a friendship or a relationship, more often than not feeling nourished. And hopefully they feel the same way. So it's kind of this give and take where when the two of you are together, it's like, oh, this is just really nice. I love being friends with this person. I feel consistently like supported. They feel like an emotionally safe person. I can open up to them based on their past behavior. So I can talk about like my hopes and my dreams and my fears and my goals. And they can do the same with me. And, there's just kind of this synergy that happens. So, but like we were talking about, a lot of this stuff, it's learning new skills, and it just takes practice. It's a different way of relating to other people. And really, I think it just starts with like taking things slow and setting the pace. Because if we're still falling into the fantasy of this perfect person, or if we're letting them set the pace, or if we are mistaking the intensity that oftentimes comes along with problematic people, if we're mistaking that intensity for sincerity, things are kind of doomed from the start. So no amount of like us being assertive or drawing boundaries is going to help things if they're just a problematic person to begin with. So it's changing how we view everything, like right up front, and just going slow. One of the things Healthy Love and I were talking about the other day was, healthy, like mature, kind of functional people, they tend to feel boring. And at first, but then over time, you realize like there's a lot of like, there's not that intensity that's there, but there's so much more that's there. There's a foundation there. There's that sense of realness. There's just that authenticity, stability. So there's, instead of intensity and like erratic behavior, there's stability. And it takes a little while to kind of change how we view that, from being boring to being appealing. Because once you make that shift, you're like, oh, it is so nice. This person's consistent. They're stable. They're reliable. And we start being like, that's really attractive qualities in another person, whether it's a friend or a romantic partner, then that is just a game changer. So it's much easier to build a healthy relationship on a healthy foundation. And yes, Healthy Love says, yes, there are lots of great people. Oh, well, good. Says, I love how focused you are on the positive now, Dana, compared to the old talks that focused more on the problem. This is more uplifting to listen to. Yes, good. Well, good deal. This is definitely the direction I want to go in, the thriving part of all of this. Yes, so I apologize. It's taken me so long to get here, but once we know different, we do different. Okay. Yes, and Taldanam says, uh, is talking about people being awful. And she says, why is everyone so freaking awful? You can't trust anyone. She says, I'd say you can't completely trust anyone in the beginning. Only time will tell if they are trustworthy. That's the difference. So if we're looking at this other person, if we're moving them into our inner circle based on how we feel about them, not based on how they treat us. Okay, this is a big difference here. If we need to have people in our inner circle who have had consistent, appropriate behavior. It's not about how attracted we are to them or how long we've known them or if they're family. It's based on how they treat us. They're solid, good people. They've treated us in a solid, good way consistently. That's the inner circle. And those spots in your inner circle are places that are earned with appropriate behavior over time. And it takes time. And I think so many of us, like I was saying before, how Pia Melody had said, intimacy without boundaries is chaos. And so if we're quick to move people into our inner circle and we're like, or we're confusing a person being friendly with them being a friend. Like, oh, this person is so funny and likable and they're so charming. And I just really, really like them. And they're so friendly to me that I'm just making them into a friend. You might not have even really know them. And then when we do stuff like that, it's a crapshoot. Like we don't know if they're actually friend material or not, because a lot of the wrong people of the world come across as really likable and charming and friendly. And they're not. They don't have good intentions. It just takes time to sort out the gold from the fool's gold, because it all kind of looks the same in the beginning. It's just time and knowledge and paying attention to kind of how you feel around this other person and how and noticing how they treat you. So. Jessica asks, what's the difference between friendly and flirty? Well, I don't know. Sometimes it can be kind of hard to spot. But I mean, I don't know if you get the vibe that somebody's hitting on you. I mean, like I'm trying to think of, I have a few, well, I guess these days I have two guy friends in my life. One is dating another really good friend of mine. We all met through a meetup group. And I mean, like we all tend to hang out together. So like, I don't know, like there's nothing that he's ever messaged me or vice versa that I would have any problem with like Travis seeing or her seeing. Like there's nothing there's nothing flirty, but even still, like with that dynamic, I don't want to ever make it awkward. So I'll have like Danielle, my other friend, his girlfriend, whenever we're out, like she'll normally come with, like I wouldn't hang out with him. There's been a few times we've hung out one-on-one if Danielle was sick or like didn't want to go to something or, whatever. Like, but I don't know. Like, I don't get a kind of a flirty vibe from him at all. And same thing with my other guy friend. Like, there's no, I don't know. Yeah, Kiara says, I feel like flirty oversteps our intuitive boundaries. Oftentimes it's subtle compliments or body language. Yeah, I mean, it can be like prolonged eye contact. It can be kind of blushing. It can be um, kind of maybe silly or flirty jokes, but only if you say no or have a problem with it. Um, these kinds of things. I guess if you're experiencing something that's not comfortable to you, I guess maybe that's probably the better focus, right? Is whether or not you're okay with what you're experiencing. So if somebody is interacting with you in a way that makes you feel like they're being flirty, or if you're dating somebody and they're messaging another person and you're like, this seems flirty, all that matters is that it feels off to you and that you're not okay with it. And then a boundary needs to be addressed. Let's see. Superstar says, in my narcissist experience, it was a combination of red flags that grabbed my attention right away. I feel like now I'll be able to recognize those things off the bat. Yeah. I think for most people it is. It's just that awareness of, I didn't realize that, like, uh, I think we all tend to think that problematic people tend to come across in a certain way. And if what we're experiencing doesn't match what we think it would look like, it just doesn't compute, especially if the person, it comes across as really charming and likable. And we're used to thinking about abusive people or problematic people being really controlling and rude and domineering and this kind of thing. So there can just kind of be that disconnect. But I think if you can focus on, and here's the thing too, like spotting this behavior and then actually acting on it can be two very different things, because like we were saying, it can be really difficult to let go of that fantasy. And when a person does, when you find yourself so attracted to another person, or like there's just this pull to them, or whatever it is, like it can really cause a person to start wondering, like, is it me? Is it them? Or are they really problematic? Or do I just have issues with commitment? And like, what's really going on? And I want concrete proof because I don't want to walk away. What if they're this amazing person and I'm just feeling this way because I have CPTSD? And it just like it can really make a person feel like they're just losing their mind. So knowing some red flags, knowing how these red flags feel is a big part of it, but actually walking away without concrete proof can prove to be very difficult. But like I was saying earlier, if you can make your new standard of, well, here's the thing too, if you can reflect back on what's making you feel so off, but even still, like, this is really difficult when you're in that kind of that pull of that love addiction. Generally that pull is the intensity that they create, where they just make you their whole world right off the bat. And especially if you are physically attracted to them, like, that's really hard to walk away from. But if you set the pace and slow things down, you just start seeing things differently. Okay, let's see here. Oh, totally. Superstar says, is it normal to be scared to start a new relationship with someone new after this? Absolutely. Absolutely. I have yet to meet anybody that wasn't. So, it's terrifying when you realize that the map, the understanding that you had of the world is incomplete. That's a terrifying feeling. And it's understandable that it would be a terrifying feeling, because then your brain is like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I thought things were a certain way and they're not a certain way. And since your brain's primary job is to keep you safe, it goes into overdrive trying to figure out how to protect you. But its odds are it's missing major chunks of information, because if you don't understand what you went through, your brain doesn't either, right? And so it can't keep you safe until it understands how to keep you safe, how to avoid problematic people, and there's a lot to it. So really the educational component of all of this, like understanding the different ways problematic people come across, and then your power in all of this, with assertiveness, with setting the pace, that's so huge, with realizing kind of what are these emotional hooks that pulled you to this person, these kinds of things. So yeah, it takes time. And a lot of people, this is like a lot of people isolate. They just withdraw and they don't want to date. They might feel completely shut off sexually. They just feel numb. There's just no desire there. And here's the sad part, and here's the challenging part, is it can really be easy to think like, okay, this was just a hit and run accident. Like, okay, narcissists and sociopaths make up, I don't know, let's just say 3 to 6% of the population. So, what is that? Like 6 in every 100 people out there. And so you might think like, okay, the odds of me coming across something like this again are really slim. And other people might be telling you, oh, you just need to love like you've never been hurt before. And you just need to get back out there. And, that person was a real jerk. And you're just, you just got to get back out there. Well, if you don't know what to watch out for, or how to handle it if the stuff does surface, or how to even spot it, because some of the stuff can just really fly under a person's radar, then there's a solid chance that a person's going to continue getting caught up in these types of relationships until they can spot what's going on. But because if a person's not aware that there's kind of like these key like educational components to it, like there's information that you can have that will set you free, that'll stop this pattern, or that can prevent this from happening again. Or at least maybe not prevent it from happening again, but you can get out a lot sooner. Because sometimes these people, they all come across in different ways. And, it's just, you get out when you see what's really going on. But what happens is a lot of people don't see, because every single manipulative or abusive person comes across in a different way, it can be really difficult to kind of understand like the wide range of problematic behavior out there. And so it's just not on a person's radar. And so what they end up doing instead is they start linking up incorrect cause and effect. So they might tell themselves, oh, that's it, I'm never going to date a Gemini again, or I'm never going to date a redhead, or never going to date a bartender, or I'm never going to date an attorney, or I'm never going to date somebody older than me or younger than me. Or do you see what I'm saying? And they're doing these things as their brain is linking up incorrect cause and effect, thinking this is what's going to keep me safe. Because they're not aware that it was the behavior that's the problem, not any of this other stuff. Superstar says, it's almost like I don't trust myself to start dating again, but I am trying to move forward with all of the tools I'm learning here. Thank you. Yes. And it's so normal to not trust yourself, because the whole, like, that's a terrifying thing to realize. Where did I go so off track? How did I misread the situation so much? And how did I not realize that this was going on? It's terrifying. And how can I prevent it from happening in the future? That rattled me for years after both of my situations. I couldn't figure it out. But learning to trust your judgment, the book, there's going to be 2 books that I'm coming out with. Well, yeah. I have two other books. I have my Start Here book, which is if you're new to all of this, it has all of like the terminology and a lot of like frequently asked questions and that kind of stuff. My second book is called Out of the Fog. And it really compares and contrasts a bunch of commonly confused concepts. So like the difference between love bombing and love, difference between like commitment and codependency, a person being a friend and a person being friendly, like these kinds of things that really confuse a lot of people. The book that I'm working on right now that should be out, I would say by like end of November, is called The Narcissist's Playbook. And it's all about manipulation, what it is, what it isn't, different ways it can come across. It really does a deep dive. And then at the end, there's a whole section about kind of things like different strategies to disable manipulation, different ways, kind of different things within us that are worth examining, especially if this tends to be a pattern in our life. So that might be something to look for. There's also going to be another book. I don't know if it might be done by the end of December, maybe. The working title of it's called Lessons Learned, but that's probably not going to be the like the end title for it. But that book is on all of like the pivotal lessons that I have learned, as well as I feel like that I see time and time again that are like the game changer moments for a lot of people. So that book really kind of condenses the other three. So and I think I have it boiled down. I have it boiled down to like under 20. So like 20 of like the big shifts with understandings that are imperative for people to make before they get back out there again. Because what tends to happen is they find channels like mine and they're like, okay, Dana, I need to heal from this. This is controlling my life. I want to isolate. I'm scared to date. I don't know. And then I need to heal. And so then time goes by and they're like, oh, this is so wonderful. I feel healed. And what they're really saying is, I don't feel like my life is so blown apart anymore. I'm starting to sleep at night. I'm starting to eat. I'm starting to kind of get back into my life. And then they go right back out there. But if they haven't learned the whole like understanding your intuition, understanding your boundaries, learning to trust yourself, learning how to develop healthy trust with other people, there's like fundamental skills there. So healing isn't about just not feeling blown apart anymore. Healing is truly about like really reconnecting like with your authentic self to where you understand your intuition, your assertiveness, and you understand when you're being mistreated, and you're able to either effectively address it or walk away. That we're breaking this pattern of that I'm going to be here and continue to get dragged through hell until I can no longer hang on anymore. Or if somebody mistreats me, I'm going to keep giving them the benefit of the doubt, thinking that they don't mean it. Or, there's so many different shifts. Or thinking that everybody is like me, right? That it's, if I'm a real team-oriented, solutions-oriented person, then everybody else must be too. And so if I come across somebody that's hurtful or manipulative, then the solution is for me just to double up on my communication. When the reality is like we need to improve our communication with ourselves and see their behavior seriously, and then figure out or clearly, and then we need to figure out what to do. So like there's lots of major lessons, important life-changing lessons to learn before we think that we're healed and we go jump back in the dating pool. Because if a person doesn't learn these lessons, here's the thing, there's no shortcut to learning these lessons. So a person, myself included, like most people learn these things the hard way. And when they do finally start to learn, if they're aware of how many of these lessons they've learned, generally what happens is they get so burned out and disgusted and they become so bitter and jaded that they're like, I just don't trust other people, or I never want to date again, or what have you. Because it's hard to continue going back out there and getting hurt like this time and time and time again, to have that wake up call of, okay, there's a pattern here. I must be, what am I missing? What am I missing? It's not that all men are rotten, or all women are rotten, or, you know what I mean? Or people my age are rotten. It's not that. It's like, it's developing the discernment necessary in order to screen people in and out of your life. This is a painful thing, like having these realizations, learning these lessons, but it's an absolute game changer, and it changes the kind of friends that you have. It changes the relationships you have. It just changes everything. Okay, let me scroll up here. All that Kaz, welcome. She says, hello, I just got here. Hi, everyone. I really needed this today. Let's see. And oh, good. Dandelion says, thank you. I've been wondering, what is healed? What concretely defines healing for us? You know, and so pretty much everything that we said. And I think in a nutshell, it's basically finding yourself and then loving what you find, in a nutshell. And when you love yourself, you value yourself, and you value your emotions and your energy and your time and your space and all of that. And we love ourselves enough to keep ourselves safe, and to not emotionally and mentally and physically and financially in any way, shape, or form. So we're able to step into that zone of like self-protection, not fortressing, but self-protection. And it's just realizing, you know what? It's realizing you matter, and that you're worth being treated with value but it has to start with you, treating yourself with value. And other people, we kind of set the tone for other people, and either they step up and treat us with the value that we know that we have, or we distance ourselves from them. We don't stay there. We don't argue with them. We don't try to earn their love or their respect or their good treatment of us. We don't, we don't get dragged through hell. Like, there's none of that. It's like, these are my standards, like, I like me, I value me, and I expect other people in my life to as well. YH says, Dana, could a narcissist or sociopath really be happy with their new supply? Well, you have to remember that they have shallow emotions. They have shallow, fleeting emotions. So is there any, there's no profound, there's no depth there. It's sort of like a young child. If you get them a toy, they love that new toy for a week, and then they're over it. And narcissists and sociopaths are very much that same way. There is no depth of emotion. It's all because there is no sincere attachment present. And there is no sincere attachment present because they just don't attach. So it's all kind of these surface level relationships. They do a great job with acting the part. There's these grand displays of intensity and love bombing and all. This is why it's so important to see this stuff for what it is. It's not sincere. It's grand, just grand displays of things. But it's hard for people if your relationship with a person like that is ended and you see them moving forward with a new supply and they seem like they're running off into the sunset together to live happily ever after. But it's like we were talking about earlier, wherever you go, there you are. So if you've got this incredibly dysfunctional person who's abusive, who, has all kinds of problematic behavior, they're going to keep bringing that to every single relationship they're in. Their mistreatment of you was a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of them. So in their mind, they might, because they're never the problem. There is no sincere insight into their own behavior. They might give lip service to it, but because there's no change. That's how you can tell there's no sincere insight. There's no change. So they might think that it's everybody else that's the problem, right? And that this new person is going to solve all their problems. Like, oh, I'm going to be this, because they're idealizing this new person. It's a cycle of immaturity. They see this new person. Oh, this person's so amazing. I've never felt this way before. This person's perfect. They're idealizing this person. So what you're seeing is the idealized stage for the next person, but it's not real. Because they don't, and that's, so remember, it goes the cycle of abuse. It goes idealize, devalue, discard. Then the devalue stage starts up when they start seeing, when those rose-colored glasses come off and they start seeing this new person clearly. And they're shocked. Like, whoa, what? What do you mean? What do you mean you don't like pizza? I like pizza. You have to wait, what do you mean? You're a Republican. I'm a Democrat. And then they realize, because when a person is caught up in that fantasy, it's truly the fantasy. It's, you're this perfect person for me. And then when they realize, oh, this other person's not a fantasy, they're a human being with wants and needs and thoughts and feelings that are not going to match theirs 100% all of the time, that's when that devalue starts. And, sometimes if you've got a real malignant person, there's not even that much depth there. Like, they truly just go around destroying people. But generally, like, if there is some sort of level of connection there, it very quickly goes into that devalue stage once they start realizing this other person is an individual. And then they start trying to control that individual, and they start trying to grind them down into being back in the box of their fantasy. And then that tends to go into the discard. Either the target of that is like, I am done. Like, I can't handle this anymore. Or they drop them thinking like, oh, well, this person this isn't what I wanted after all. And they go and they find the next person. And it just starts over and over and over again. So no, I mean, they're going to keep repeating that pattern forever, until they understand their own behavior. But the thing is, for any of us to understand, to break any pattern that we are in, we have to experience pain from our actions, and we have to have awareness that there's a problem. It's like sincere, lasting awareness that there's a problem, in order for us to have that motivation to change. Because change isn't like flipping a light switch. It's a consistent process. And it requires like consistent effort and like introspection. And then a lot of like falling forward, a lot of making mistakes and doing things not so right. And then learning from that and continuing to keep moving forward. They don't have that, because to them, there's nothing wrong with them. It's everybody else that's the problem. And I, in all fairness, I will say that everybody like that tends to be waking up from a problem doesn't see their part in it. Okay. So if you're identifying with a lot of what I'm saying right now, please just realize we go through something that's very similar, except we're the receivers of the abuse. We're not the abusers. That's the main difference. Yeah. Rob says, yeah, it's a lot of falling upstairs. Absolutely. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with quitting smoking. It's the same thing with losing weight. It's the same thing with getting sober. It's a process. All that Kaz asks, is cognitive dissonance only an occurrence with NPD? Okay, hold on. So no, cognitive dissonance is something that we all experience on a regular basis. And we tend to experience it more so with manipulators because their behavior doesn't make sense, because manipulative behavior is confusing behavior. But cognitive dissonance is just a $10 term for mental distress. And it's that mental distress or mental anguish that we experience when we're holding two conflicting thoughts about the same topic at the same time. So, for example, for example, for tonight, I waited like till the last minute to eat dinner. I have half my dinner sitting here. I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, I'm trying to lose weight, so there's a disconnect there, right? So I was like, man, I really need to eat something before I go on the live stream. I'm going to be really, really hungry towards the middle of it. And so I'm just going to make myself a sandwich real quick. But I had these two conflicting thoughts. One was like, I really need to eat something. The other one was like, I really shouldn't have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So two conflicting thoughts. Like, I want to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I don't want to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Two conflicting thoughts about the same topic at the same time, causing me mental distress, a low degree of mental distress, but mental distress. In order to smooth that over, I had to somehow rationalize the action that I was going to take, because I was like, I have seriously 10 minutes to just eat something. My action was, I need to eat something. So my rationalization was, I'm going to just have to eat this. I'm only going to eat half of it though. So that was how I made myself okay with taking that action. That was, your thoughts and actions always have to line up. And when they don't line up, they cause distress. So I made myself okay with eating a sandwich because I told myself, oh, it's okay, I'm only eating half of it. That's how I smoothed out that cognitive dissonance. But so we experience this all the time to a low degree. It moves from like a little like kind of mental distress to mental anguish, depending on obviously like the degree of the confusion that's present, or the degree of the conflicting thoughts that are present, and the degree of the emotional investment we have in the outcome. So for example, that obviously not a high stakes kind of decision, but if, let's say I was with somebody, at a job, and I had two conflicting thoughts. One was, I really need this job. I need to make money. I need to pay my bills. But the other thought was, I hate this job so much. I feel like it's sucking the life out of me. Like, I can't stay at this job. So two conflicting thoughts, same thing, same time. If my action is going to be to stay in that job, I'm going to have to somehow ease the distress there. And so I'm going to have to justify my action. Why am I staying in this job? Well, then I might tell myself, well, it could always be worse. Or maybe I might tell myself something like, well, there's actually a lot of, good things about this job. Or I should be so lucky. It's a rough job market out there. Or I might say something like, and there's more like, healthier forms of justification. Like, not all justifications are like problematic. You might tell yourself, you know what, I'm going to stay at this job because I need it to pay my bills, but I'm going to start putting together my resume. So you're easing that distress. But here's the thing. So every time we start justifying something that's problematic, here's an example. There is a channel that I watch on YouTube, and her name is Amber Lynn Reed, and she's young. She's 27, I think, and her channel started off as a weight loss channel, and she's over the past 2 years, she's gained over 200 pounds. What's interesting for me about her channel is to watch her justifications of her addiction. She's addicted to food. To watch her justifications, and my heart goes out to her, because it's these continual justifications of, oh, I'm tired. It was the same thing with the peanut butter sandwich. Oh, it's just half. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, it's this. I don't feel good, or da 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 da. But it's slowly getting worse and worse and worse. And I don't know. My heart goes out to her, because anybody that's caught up in that addictive process or that destructive process, it's just heartbreaking, But this is how it tends to go. So when we so let's take another example. Let's say a person has a drinking problem. If they continue to justify things to themselves, oh, they got a DUI because the cops were just out. It was a hopping weekend, or it wasn't because of their drinking, right? It was there was just a lot of cops out, and maybe they had a taillight out. Or, oh, I didn't drink that much. I just hadn't eaten earlier. That's why I was feeling drunk. Or, I don't know. I mean, there's any number of justifications. Oh, I didn't have that much to drink. I only had, 4 drinks, but everybody else around me had 8. Therefore, I don't have a problem. Kind of justifying their behavior, justifying it. And of course, too, when drinks like at the bar might be 3 times the size of what actually a drink is. But then so things tend to get worse and worse and worse for a person, right? And then until they hit that rock bottom, they have some sort of moment that causes them so much pain that they realize, I can't do this anymore. So with weight gain, it might be, with this gal, with Amber Lynn, it might be to the point she becomes bedbound, which I think will happen in the next year. Or, like some sort of, a person gets their second or their third DUI, or they lose their job, or their spouse threatens to leave, or, they're in an abusive relationship, and somebody tells them, you're in an abusive relationship, or their partner threatens them. There's some sort of moment that cuts through all of that cognitive dissonance, cuts through all of the denial, all of the justifications, and they realize, oh my God, I've got to do something different. And that moment of rock bottom it's so powerful, because it's at that moment that a fork in the road appears. And just like we were talking about earlier, we are all wired for consistency. We're wired to stay within our comfort zone, even if the comfort zone is causing us a tremendous amount of pain. But we only step out of that comfort zone when things become so painful that the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of doing something different. So, okay, let's see. Yeah, all that Kaz says, yes. And the cognitive dissonance makes me feel like I'm losing my mind, like I'm sometimes out of my body and a step away from my reality. Yes. And this is in large part because when you're justifying stuff that deep down, like your inner self, your healthy self knows is a problem, we're in denial. We're trying to deny things to ourselves, but that there's a deeper part of your brain that you can't fool. So we're trying to convince ourselves that this new person isn't problematic, or we're trying to gloss over these red flags and tell ourselves that this is somehow normal, and when it's not. And so this stuff tends to surface in other ways. We start to feel anxious and unhinged. We feel suspicious or paranoid. We might start having nightmares. We are in perpetual confusion because we want to believe that what we're experiencing isn't what's actually going on. We want to believe when you've got a person that you're dating that's finessing you and telling you that they're not cheating and that you can trust them and all of this, but then all of the evidence points to they're cheating. Right? They're getting all of these text messages from other people. They're staying out. There's squirrely behavior. There's stuff that doesn't add up. If we're wanting to hold on to the fantasy, then we have to deny the reality. But the problem is you can't fool your brain. And so it's continuing to try to get your attention of like, you're in danger. This is not sincere behavior that you're experiencing. And that's what makes us feel so crazy, is we're trying to tell ourselves everything's fine, but it's not fine. And we just don't want to admit it. Okay. Jennifer says, one of my coworkers is on a med leave, and I went over to her house to check on her and give her some company. I met her husband and I could tell something was off. She said they're legally separated, but I've heard 3 different coworkers tell me now that he's physically abusive to her. Is there anything I can do to help her? That's tough depending on what her situation is. It might be best if you want to reach out to say something like, here's what I found. I feel like sometimes if you can give a person a resource, they're probably experiencing all of this ongoing mental anguish, or they're looking for some sort of clarity. If you can just point them in the right direction, they're going to start doing all of the digging and trying to put the pieces together. So sometimes giving them, like even like this YouTube channel or any other YouTube channels on this topic that you think might help, just say, hey, you know what? We don't have to talk about this if you're not comfortable with it. This is some stuff that I kind of heard. And again, you don't need to like confirm or deny it. I just wanted to know if this was indeed the case. This is something I've been through. I've been through something similar, and this is something that helped me. And just say, you know what, you could check it, or you could just leave it open. You might want to just try Googling narcissistic abuse, or go on YouTube and look up narcissistic abuse and just put the ball in her court and then go from there. Or you could always just say, hey, I just want you to know I went through something similar. And if you ever want to talk, or if you just need somebody to listen, you can call me. And then just leave the door open. Yeah, all that Kaz says, yeah, Jennifer, she said, I would just say be your friend. And if she trusts you and needs your help, she will eventually ask. Yes, and that's good advice. I would agree. Okay, let me scroll up here. Rob says, there's a little bug flying around here. Rob says, narcissists are that addiction psychologically that we keep getting hooked on, like unhealthy substances and behaviors. Yes, it's not even so much them, it's the intensity and the fantasy that comes with them. So like we were talking about earlier, if you can start to see this love bombing for the insincere behavior that it is, it really loses. It's like seeing a magic trick for what it is. Like it loses all of the allure and the mystique and the pull to it. Because it's sort of like, yeah, I see what you're doing there, you know? And if we can get out of that fantasy and just realize like healthy, functional people don't act this way. We see the mirage for what it is. That we see that there's nothing there. We so want it. We might so want it to be there. Like, oh man, it feels so good to get caught up in like this fairy tale whirlwind, idealized, over the top kind of thing that seems to only happen in the movies, but it's fantasy. And when that reality comes crashing down, it's just nothing but pain. So I think it's a lot easier to break. I mean, I will tell you, like I've met a few people over the years. Walking away from that intensity and seeing it for what it is really freaking difficult, because there really is that pull. But I think Pia Melody is just so spot on. It's that fantasy. It's somewhere, possibly most likely in our childhood, if we didn't get the love or the affection or attention that we needed, we're still looking for somebody to fill that bucket. And that's why there's this fantasy there. And that's why we're who said it? I forget. I don't know if it was a comment or I don't remember who said it, but somebody had said something. Oh, maybe it was the Alanis Morissette interview with Pia Melody. And she was talking, Alanis Morissette was saying, oh my gosh, like she realized it was the fantasy of these people. She was looking to be loved. And so when somebody would show her like attention or affection, she was very quick to like project her fantasy onto them. And she had said it was like scotch taping the fantasy over them. And then she would kept finding herself in all of these crazy relationships and like couldn't figure out why. And that was a big part of the reason. And that just made so much sense. Now, granted, they do a really great job at pretending to be your soulmate and like this perfect partner for you. And, but I think if you see the insincerity for what it is and realize why there's that pull, that if you've been feeling unloved or unimportant, or if you just think that really exists, that the fantasy is really out there, then we're going to keep falling for it. But it's, like I said, it's never, like it's never healthy. It's never sincere. It's a fantasy. That's it. Oh, good. Fallon says, the way you just explained that about the fantasy and the magic trick comparison was exactly what I needed to hear. Cool. I'm so glad. Yeah, having this stuff, I don't know. There's so much there's so much confusion about all of this that I think a lot of people, when they come here, they're like, I'm just confused. Like, I don't even know what specifically I'm confused, like just all of it. Like, I'm just confused about all of it. And, but it can really help to start picking apart parts of it and going through that. So I'm glad that was helpful. That's another great reason I think support groups can be so helpful, because it's so much easier to see this kind of stuff in other people than it is in ourselves. But okay, Kristen says, I'm confused. What if you meet a man that's romantic? Isn't that a type of fantasy? So is romantic love not good or healthy? Okay, great. Oh, you guys have such good questions. Great question. And Healthy Love says, yes, romantic doesn't mean fantasy. So romantic, I would agree, does not mean fantasy. It's still, you're meeting this person's highest and best self. You're meeting that job interview candidate, right? So you're meeting their representative, like somebody else said on the chat tonight. They're trying to woo you. It's not necessarily fantasy, but it's not 100% reality either. If somebody comes across right out of the gate, and most people do, right? You're dating, everybody's going to be on their best behavior. And if they're not, that's really kind of a red flag, because they can't even pull it together to try to impress. And, most people try to impress on the first, handful of dates at least. So I guess just seeing romance as romance, it's wooing. It's part of the whole wooing process. It's not who they really are. Like, who they really are is, it just takes time. That kind of stuff takes time to surface. It's how do they handle you setting a boundary? I guess what I'm saying is, like, don't mistake the romance for the reality. So how do they handle you setting a boundary? How do they handle you disagreeing with them? How do they handle being sick? How do they handle conflict? How do they treat people that can't do anything for them? Like, that they're not trying to impress, like the waiter or the waitress, or even like the homeless person. Like, how do they treat other people? These kinds of things. This is the stuff to look for, because that's more indicative of like character and personality than flowers and candy. Free Spirit asks, who was the Alanis Morissette interview with? It was with Pia Melody. Alanis Morissette has this whole channel, which I was certain that it was a weird dream that Missouri Cowboy had, until I looked it up. And sure enough, it wasn't a weird dream. It is true. She has a whole channel, and she talks about all kinds of things. She has one on YouTube, and then she has a podcast as well. I think it's called Conversations with Alanis. And it's emotional health kind of topics. And it's very interesting. So definitely check it out. It's so fun. I have to say, I kind of got this big kick out of listening to her channel, because, it humanizes her. Like, you see people in a certain light, and you're like, oh, she's a musician, she's, you know, kind of a rock star. But then you're like, oh no, she's a person that has issues and challenges and is on that self-actualization path as well. You know, I don't know. Just maybe just kind of a weird realization. Interesting. Okay. Yes, an overcomer says, oh, normal people are moody and have problems to solve. We have to learn to accept people as they are, which is not romantic all the time. We have good days and bad days. Yeah. Yes, I would agree. And in seeing, but with that said, let me just kind of contextualize that. It's okay to have deal breaker stuff. So like and I know that's not what you're saying, but just in case people are new here and they might get this confused, because it can be a slippery slope into thinking like, well, no one's perfect, and meaning allowance of abusive behavior. So while no one's perfect, and while people have, you know, good days and bad days, and they can be moody, it's still okay to have deal breakers, and it's still okay to have expectations of, this is how I expect you to treat me. Like, even when you are sick, even when you are in pain, even when you are frustrated. Obviously, they wouldn't be romantic during those times, but I still expect you to be decent to me and to be civil. Like, it's okay for you to be frustrated or irritated or in pain or upset with me or whatever. But like, let's talk about it, you know? And I would expect for a person to not be cruel or demeaning or to yell or to start cussing at me when they feel that way. Like, we can have disagreements. Sort of like there needs to be like some sort of PMLD refers to it as more like a containment boundary. So there needs to be this level of containment with how we behave and how we expect other people to behave. And you know, it's okay to be upset, but like for an adult, it's not okay for them to have like a level 10 like temper tantrum, right? Like there's certain like expectations of behavior, and that's appropriate and healthy and normal. So, okay. Let's see. Somebody had asked about not wanting to date. And I'm sorry, I lost the question in the chat. It's about not wanting to date after this. It's very common. A lot of people don't want to date for years after this, and that's okay. Like, that's okay. It's okay. Like, it just takes some time to get comfortable with yourself. And it's really important that you learn that you're able to have enough certainty with your perceptions of reality, that you're able, self-protection is number one, that you're able to just protect yourself. So you're able to, we talked about this the other live stream about, it's that need for certainty. It's that need for concrete proof, right? And like, how do we tell what's really real and like what's due to our past, and like, or what's due to like, how do we know if they really have squirrely behavior, or if we truly are misreading the situation because of our CPTSD? And I like to look at it as the difference between having the truth with a capital T and the truth with the lowercase t. And we may never have the truth with the capital T. None of us will. Like, reality is all about perception. And you can have, 10 different people in a room, and every people have 10 different perceptions of reality. And so it's more about finding the truth with a little t. So your perception of reality. And this goes back to like when you're dating, if you have your standards and a solid understanding of this, of like, if you shift it from like, I don't need to figure out what another person is like thinking or feeling or doing or up to, I don't need to try to get concrete proof as to figuring them out. I need to shift that and figure out me and what's allowable in my life. So instead of trying to figure out, is this like squirrely behavior, in fact, squirrely, and playing detective and like, confronting them and trying to figure it all out, instead of doing all of that, shifting it to, how do I feel about squirrely behavior? And is squirrely behavior a deal breaker? And if it is, then, like I need to go. So when you shift it back onto like what works for you, it doesn't matter. Like it just sets you free. It doesn't matter what is going on with them. But as far as like feeling sexual, feeling like you even want to go down that path and date, it often takes time. And then even still, the challenge is like what we were talking about earlier is it's very common for a normal relationship to feel really flat after you've been with an emotional manipulator, because they have all of this intensity and normal people don't. And so that's its own process that takes a lot of getting used to, is trying to navigate how to be intimate with another, how to be sincerely intimate with another person instead of substituting that intensity for intimacy. Because with intensity often comes like amazing sex and like you're telling them all these deep things about you and all of this stuff, but there's no sincere connection on their end. Whereas a normal person, there's intimacy, like you're sharing yourself in a more constrained, like moderate way, but there's more of a foundation there. And it takes time to see the love bombing and the intensity for what it is, and to not, because a lot of people, when they start dating again, they're like, oh man, I'm ruined for life. Like that, this narcissist was like the love of my life. And I'm never going to have, I just want to feel loved like that again. And this is why people tend to keep going back, because there's caught between like, I want to be loved like that, or I'm scared I'll never be loved like that again. And I am terrified to be hurt like that again, because it's just that intensity. And that's what keeps them going back. And so it's having to kind of retrain your brain to understand like normal person behavior, I guess. Okay. Yeah. And Bonnie says, question, yes, squirrely behavior and plausible deniability. That's what narcissists use to gaslight us. Yes. And there's a lot of truth to that. That's just crazy making. Thank you, JCat, for the live stream donation, and lovely little message. Says, thank you, Dana, with a little heart. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be able to do this and that people can get something out of it. Okay, Smurf's hopping off. Have a good night. Oh, I know what I was looking at my phone for. I grabbed my phone. I'm like, why? I was going to look book club. Book club is next Thursday, October 25th. So I need to hurry up and read that book. Okay, book club, October 25th, 2018, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The book that we are reading is called Facing Codependence, which is by Pia Melody. So I hope you guys can join us for that. And I'll make an announcement about it next week as well. Okay, let me scroll up. Let's see here. And Pia Melody has a ton of videos on YouTube as well. So that's, if you're kind of new to her or her work, it's definitely worth checking out. Okay, Overcomer says, okay, back to the romance thing, says, okay, in other words, romantic all the time is not normal. Yes, thanks. Thank you for clarifying. Overcomer says, expecting an exciting life and relationship is the illusion. That's when people become disappointed, when things aren't exciting all the time. And then actually to go with that, Catherine, next question says, do you think narcissists increase our dopamine and that's why we have an addictive style to that type of love? It's interesting. I think you guys are kind of talking about the same thing. Actually, real quick, let me hop up to New Life, New Hope, who says, I've met someone I really clicked with and he seems very keen on me, but honestly, I'm terrified of making a mistake again. And, you know, it's all about you setting the pace. So in slowing things, just realizing like it's going to take time to actually get to know this person. So just go slow and, you know, slowly open up about yourself. When you're introducing intimacy, it's like that marble jar, you know, and if you go slow, those roots don't get so deep so fast. And it's not as devastating if they turn out to not be what the fantasy of what you were hoping they were going to be. Because I think that part of that fantasy, it's always there. I mean, our brain fills in details all the time. You know, I guess it's not so much like trying to necessarily even get rid of the fantasy. It's just realizing that there's that fantasy that's there and not letting it like drive our behavior. Okay, so back to what Overcomer was saying. Expecting an exciting life and relationship is the illusion. That's when people become disappointed, when things aren't exciting all the time. Yes. And so then what tends to happen is if you get, you have some people that only understand love as intensity. So like what Catherine was saying, do you think narcissists increase their dopamine? And that's why we have an addictive style to that type of love. If you've got another person that only understands intensity as love, then so here you have this the narcissist that's coming with all of their own intensity, the hot, cold, the up, down, the back, forth, the, you know, all of that. If their partner only feels loved when the narcissist has made them if they only feel loved during the love bombing or the makeup after the breakup kind of stuff, then they're bringing forth their own level of intensity. It's basically like, prove to me you care, prove to me you care. And so then they start provoking fights. They start doing things to get the narcissist to show that they care. And then that's when the whole ball of crazy is just unleashed. And back to what Pia Melody was saying about, you know, intimacy without boundaries is chaos. Except with that, it's not even intimacy. It's intensity without boundaries is chaos. And she even said in that love addiction book, like when you get to people at like polar extremes, when you get an extreme love addict and you get an extreme love avoidant, these relationships can very easily become homicidal. And this is why. I really feel like this was the situation with Jodi Arias, the girl that killed her boyfriend, because he was doing the hot, cold, up, down kind of thing. He was playing with her. Basically, he was manipulating her. And she had all of the kind of just the up, down, kind of just the level of intensity. She was jumping into that. And finally, she just snapped. I think another good example of the intensity that a love addict can bring is the whole situation. If you're a big fan of like kind of, I don't know, gossipy YouTube stuff, the whole situation between Trish Paytas and Jason Nash. And you can look up videos on them. I'm not saying he's necessarily love avoidant, but she's definitely a love addict. And this is something that she's admitted in the past. But if you look, she's continually trying to provoke reactions in him. And it's almost like it's just her way of saying, show me you care, show me you care, show me you care. And she's needing this unconditional, positive regard from him all the time. And of course, he can't be that all of the time if he's going to be authentic in that relationship. And that relationship's just not going to end well. Like, you know, it's sad because The thing with the person that's that kind of that extreme of a love addict is they never feel safe or secure in a relationship, because the more stable the relationship is, generally the more stable it is, the healthier it is. But healthy people don't stay with that kind of stuff. It's a huge turnoff. It's exhausting. And it's just finally get to the point where I can't, there's so much intensity on her end. And it's a lot of that like oozing sexuality, like really using sex, using charm, using excitement, continual love bombing in order to try to get him to stay. But if he can't match that level of intensity, she doesn't feel loved. So then she starts pushing buttons. And it's going to most likely eventually end up causing them to break up. So I don't think, okay, so back to like, do narcissists increase our dopamine? That hot, cold, like the intermittent reinforcement, like the hot, cold, up, down, back, forth stuff does. Like that's how trauma bonds are formed with other people. So it's a whole mix, a whole cocktail of chemicals that are going through a person's system. When the good times are really good, there's a lot of like dopamine and oxytocin. When the bad times are really bad, there's a lot of cortisol and adrenaline. That's only relieved by the relief of the good times. So it's just this surge. And so because your body's just being flooded with all of these chemicals, this is another reason why other relationships can feel so flat, because they don't have all of this. But hopefully there can be, if you can get rid of that intensity and all of that, this excitement and drama, and replace it with something of substance, and start finding that attractive of like, boy, it's really nice to be able to, come home and spend quality time together instead of, makeup, breakup, chaos, disruption, all of that. And Pia Melody had said too in that Love Addiction book, how did she put it? Something along the lines of like love addicts fear abandonment. They fear abandonment, and so they're unable to be intimate. Love avoidance, like primary fear is intimacy. Okay. So love addicts, like our conscious fear is of abandonment, but our subconscious, our deeper fear is of intimacy. Because it's basically like, if I really let somebody know who I am, then I'm afraid that they're actually going to leave. Whereas love avoidance, their conscious fear is of intimacy. Like they have no desire. They're like, I do not want to be, nobody's going to know who I am. But their deeper fear is that they have fear abandonment. I thought that was pretty spot on. So I think that they do know consciously, like that there's, they don't really value intimacy. Like it's all superficial connection, and it's, it's all fleeting, and there's no regard for other people or, morals or any of that. Maura says, I got a little triggered today standing in the same place I stood 1.5 years ago with the narcissist. That night was the first time he really blew up on me. This was the first time I went to this place since. Wow. Yeah, I could see why you would be a little triggered. But, I think it's okay. So moments like this can be great experiences or great opportunities for us to kind of reframe how we perceive these places. So for example, like one of the things that you could do would be to visualize certain memories like this as a record. And like you take a key and you either scratch it up, or like you visualize like overwriting like an old computer. They don't even have this anymore, right? Like an old computer disk. Like you're overwriting it with new memories. And so this was maybe a restaurant that you went to before. It has a really like negative imprint on you. And so now if you can go there, maybe next time you go there, you can go there with some person that's emotionally safe and really make a concerted effort to rewrite in your brain a new memory on top of this place. So instead of this is the restaurant that my ex exploded on me at, now it's the restaurant that you went to with a friend and you both wore, I don't know, big red hats, right? Or this is the restaurant that you went to where you had brunch, or that you, I don't know, did something fun. So you're overwriting it. These kinds of things a person can do in their house too. So if there's certain items of clothing or items of furniture that you don't want to get rid of, but that have kind of that heaviness of those old memories on them, you can use the same concept of overwriting it. I call it you can have like a change the energy party. So if you have something, let's say, I don't know, like you really like your bed, but your bed reminds you, you got it when you got married, and it's sort of like, oh, this feels like it's our bed and it's just awkward and uncomfortable, but you can't afford money to get a new bed. You can do something like have a friend come over and say that I need to rewrite memories over this. And so maybe you guys do something like you put on some really fun music and you jump on the bed, or you, I don't know, have a glass of wine on the bed, or maybe you take a permanent marker and you write something on the mattress that would be covered up by the sheet, right? Maybe you just write words of empowerment all over your mattress in permanent marker. You make the bed your own. And so you're overwriting all of those unpleasant emotions with new ones. That can really help tremendously. Oh, Jessica says that she just recently joined Meetup. That's awesome. I'll be curious to hear what you think of it. It is the general public. It is a little hit or miss, but you can really meet some awesome people out there. Okay. Let me scroll down here. Lauren says, does anyone have any advice on dealing with the sudden and unexpected death of a narcissistic parent? Well, I guess my question would be how are you feeling about that? I would imagine it's a mix of emotions, but are there any emotions right now that you're struggling more so with than others? Peace, Mercy, and Grace says, I'm new here. What is Meetup? Check it out, meetup.com. It's generally the groups are either free or really low cost, and you can find all kinds of groups. It's not dating, it's socializing. And you can find a bunch of groups in your area. It's great for people that are kind of at different transitional states in their life, or they're just looking to connect with like-minded people. And I'm a big fan of joining join dozens of groups if you can. And it's a great way to just get back out there and start living life and meeting new people and doing so in a non-dating kind of way. Let's Be Real says, I know what NPD is, but I've heard one or two stories of people who actually changed. Well, I think here's the thing. I guess I just don't buy it. The needle doesn't really move that far, to be honest. And if it does, it takes decades. And a narcissist, even if a narcissist says that they've changed, they're pathological liars. So they're not an accurate historian like of anything. So I definitely wouldn't listen to a manipulative person for the truth. And I also wouldn't listen to anyone around them because they can act the part for quite a while. I don't know. I guess I look at it as life's just too short to be around pathological, like toxic people. So I don't know. I guess for me, like, even if they were to change, which is, I mean, like, a person has to have sincere accountability and awareness that their behavior is the problem in order for them to even begin to change it. And change it's a long process, especially when you're talking about behavior change. So I just don't buy it. I mean, if you think about other people in your life that you've known for a while, I mean, seriously, like, look around, like, think about all the different people in your life that have actually, like, the people that you know in your life, have they radically changed? Even the ones that are super into like personal growth, like, how much have they changed? You know, more people tend to they might have subtle changes, but people tend to kind of become more of what they already are with time. And if anything, the toxic people in my life, I'm constantly stunned by how little insight they have and how little they've changed. It's jaw-dropping, really. So yeah, I don't buy it. Acting the part is not the same thing as changing. Okay. Lauren says, my mom died in front of me out of nowhere, and I feel relief and guilt and pain. My goodness. That would be quite the shock. I can only imagine. I think a death of a parent, even if an abusive parent, it's going to have a wide mix of emotions like what you're experiencing. And any type of loss is going to also have a wide mix of emotions. And I think just knowing that it's okay to feel how you feel, and you might have a wide mix of emotions for a while, because there just kind of is this like resolution process to understanding all of this and just moving through all of this. So it's okay. It's okay and understandable that you would feel relief and guilt and hurt and pain and all kinds of things. It might help to journal about it, or to do some kind of closure exercises with maybe writing her a letter of everything that you feel and why. Or there's an exercise called empty chair, where you would imagine her sitting in an empty chair and kind of talking to her, this is how I feel and this is why, and just letting it all out. And that sometimes that can help with kind of getting some closure about something like that. But my goodness, I'm sorry you went through that. That's traumatic. Regardless of how you felt about the person, that's still incredibly traumatic. Okay, let me scroll up here. Oh, that's a good question. Blue Moon asks, what is the difference between being a love avoidant and fortressing? Can fortressing lead to becoming love avoidant? I have kind of a similar question. The way that I understood Pia Melody when she was talking about this, it was more of these two primary styles that result from some sort of relationship trauma as a child. So a person becomes either one or the other. The love avoidant, there's a lot of overlap with codependency. The love avoidant I'm sorry, did I say love addict? There's a lot of overlap with codependency, the love avoidant. Um, I would imagine like a lot of overlap with like narcissism and sociopathy and psychopathy. But I also think that a person, trauma doesn't just happen in childhood. And I really feel like our personalities are continually being formed by the events around us. I don't think it's just like they're set in stone after the age of 7, which is kind of more of like the kind of common theory is that like these early years of our life really are the fundamental shaping forces of our personality. And then that's kind of it. I really feel like if a person has trauma later on, like really significant trauma later on, then that can also radically impact your life. I guess, though, that's not really understood to be like personality. It's more of like trauma that's layered on to an existing personality. I don't know. Maybe we're just talking semantics here, but I feel like when a person goes through something traumatic, it's very common for them to fortress and to want to be alone. If you think about any wounded animal, any fearful animal, they want to be alone. They isolate. I think that's just, it's a part of it. But I think, yeah, if that trauma, if it's left unaddressed, that kind of self-protective fortressing can turn into, it can become more like concrete and more firmly rooted to where a person really becomes love avoidant out of that. So I think it's, when I talk about, I think the importance of getting back into life and joining meetup groups and forcing yourself to kind of get out there at least like once a week, doing something. You probably heard me talk about this before. I really view it as a form of like physical therapy. If a person breaks, if they get in a really bad accident and they break both of their legs, they have to start going to physical therapy in order to heal. They don't want to go through physical therapy. It's painful. It's uncomfortable. It's not something they want to do, but they have to do it to start healing. Like the bones aren't, the body is not going to be able to repair itself accurately if the person just lays in bed. And I think there's something to be said for kind of that same concept, but emotionally. Like there's kind of this like emotional therapy that we need to do where it's just this reintegration into life where I know like I get it. Like you don't feel like it. You want to isolate, but I think it does an ocean of good for a person to get back out into life, doing something that's, even if you're like, I feel very flat and very numb and disinterested, and I just want to withdraw. And I just kind of want to be here alone to lick my wounds. I don't trust people. I don't trust myself. Like I don't feel like it. It can help. I'm such a strong believer. I think going to a meetup group, going to play trivia, it doesn't have to be anything intense. Going to play trivia, going on, I don't know, around here they have a lot of kayaking group, like midnight kayak run with some people, just something to get back out there, to reassure your brain life does exist after this. It really does go a long way in helping a person to move forward. Okay, let's see. Bonnie says, Dana, why can't others see the fortressing, the abuse? Why can't others see the fortressing, the abuse that people go through at the hands of the narcissists in their lives? I just think that people that have never even come close to being through something like this have no context. They just think, oh, that's just Bonnie. She just doesn't want to go out so much anymore. Or, oh, those personality changes Bonnie's having, I think she's just depressed. Her marriage has been on the rocks for a while. Or maybe she's having a hard time at work, or, things with her grandson. Or they try to make sense out of it in the best way they know possible, but they just don't have the full context. Okay, let's see here. Wait, what now? Ileana saying the psychologist that I was seeing kept pushing me to tell him that I hear voices. I said, you can ask me this for hours, but I really just don't hear anything. Yikes. That's strange. Let me scroll up and see what else. I feel like I'm missing a big chunk of that conversation here. Oh, there's a lot of chat to catch up on. Really? Healthy Love says, my psychologist did the same. What on earth? Healthy Love says, they often think we have a split personality disorder, or I guess multiple personality disorder, because of the CPTSD. I could see them, but even still, like that's not, I mean, schizophrenia isn't the same as dissociative identity disorder. I mean, generally, if a person's like that dysregulated, I would think the first thing any mental health professional would do would think this person, frankly, it's either they're having a manic episode or a complete psychotic break, or they're on meth. Like those are the kind of three primary things that they're going to, that's what we would screen for. So, and you can generally start narrowing that down pretty quickly, but that's just awful. I mean, there's lots of people that have like a psychotic break and they don't hear voices. That's really disturbing that they kept pushing you to try to admit to something that you weren't experiencing. Okay, Free Range Phoenix says, I got to practice being social. It's super important to start healthy. Start with attending, then anything that you see can be improved, like smiling, tone, not oversharing. Yes, I think, yeah, Heather. Okay, and then Heather says, I just joined a divorce group on Meetup, but I don't know if I want to go back because a guy in the group asked me out. He got weird because I set a boundary and said no. He asked again last week, and he is a licensed marriage and family therapist. It's funny that you say that. I had the only guy that's ever hit on me in a Meetup group has also been a therapist. It's amazing like how tone deaf a therapist can be, you know, and inappropriate. But yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you, and it's good practice for setting boundaries and reinforcing them. But that is frustrating. Okay, let me scroll up here. Healthy Love says, I swear my psychologist was crazier than me. Bonnie says, I gave up on psychologists. I think many of them are just whack and don't bother giving them money or the time of day. You know, it runs a huge gamut. I mean, there are some that are just truly awful. Like, I don't understand. There's obviously major issues with the whole mental health profession. If you can get somebody that's like just wildly inappropriate, you know, that's a problem. But there are many out. I mean, I know Healthy Love, you have an amazing therapist now that is just worth his weight in gold. And they are out there. It's just, it can take a little doing to actually find somebody that you click with, that understands, that you have a good like rapport with. And with all of that. But yeah, it can really be, there's so much damage a bad therapist or psychiatrist can do. It's, yeah, it's saddening, deeply saddening. Healthy Love was saying, yes, thinking at the time, she said it was just after I left my abuser. The thinking is disordered and we have a problem focusing, but we dissociate. Yes, but I can see why a person would do that. And I can see why that would look like a total, well, basically be like a complete psychotic break. But I mean, again, but that's not the same as schizophrenia, which is, it's not even in the ballpark, which would make me wonder what was going on there. Okay, let's. Okay, let me scroll up. Yes, Missouri Cowboy was saying yes, and Healthy Love says yes. Now the one I have now is brilliant and awesome, and that is so fantastic to hear, because that's what we like to see around here. Missouri Cowboy says later, his second therapist explained that thinking one is hearing their name when they hear various sounds is a form of hypervigilance or an exaggerated startle response. It's normal for abuse survivors. Yes, so sometimes hearing things that aren't there, it is a sign of hypervigilance, and it can also be a sign of extreme stress. And even if a person, schizophrenia is very, that's just one sign of it. And it tends to be more than just like a word every now and again, if a person is actively having like hallucinations like that. But stress does wild things to a person's brain. It really, really does. And if a person's already struggling with some sort of mental illness, it can really exacerbate it. So stress is no joke. I tell you, I think if anything is understudied, it's the effects of stress, because it's amazing what it can do to a person and to their thinking and to their everything. Healthy Love says, thank you for today. I have to go to sleep. I love my artwork behind you. Yes, I love it as well. Thank you so much for it. This is all I was able to hang up. I need to get frames. I'm not even going to tell you how I hung these other things up, but I kept the integrity of the work, but I have to go get some good frames over the weekend here. But yes, if anybody's interested in learning more about these paintings, Healthy Love, her website is wholeheartedarts.com. So you can check it out. You can see all of her paintings over there. James asks, what is a psychotic break? It's basically a complete disconnect from reality that is accompanied by psychosis. So delusional, erratic, kind of dissociating, just completely not in reality. And it can happen. It can happen under extreme stress. It can happen if a person, maybe they've never had, it can happen under extreme stress. A person doesn't need to have a psychotic disorder or a mental illness in order to have a psychotic break. Hopefully they are under extreme amount of stress. They just have this complete disconnect from reality with the right kind of medication or therapy, or even just time and the relief of the stress, that they can kind of come back to themselves, and then that's, hopefully it's a one-time thing. For some people that struggle with certain types of mental illness, Stress can be a contributing factor and can kind of spiral them into all different kinds of like manic episodes. It can be a catalyst for a manic episode, or it can be, if they struggle with some sort of like psychotic disorder, then, stress and like life events and these kinds of things, or even being on the wrong medication or not enough of the right medication or on drugs, can contribute to these things continuing on. Yes. Peace, mercy, and grace says, when my husband died, I heard a voice once saying hello. I never responded. Yes, that's interesting. A lot of people report um, that they either see or they hear a loved one that's been recently deceased. And I have to kind of wonder if I would imagine that it's your brain trying to make sense of this new normal, and that there's just kind of like this residual, like you're used to hearing from this person, or you're used to um, interacting with them, and all of a sudden they're not there. So I don't know, but it's a very common thing, especially like the first month or so after the person passes. Kiara. Oh, yep, there it is. Okay. It says, Dana, I feel like sometimes I keep looking for momentary pleasure instead of prolonged rest and healing. I oftentimes eat as an escape. I don't overeat, but I do stress eat. How can I stop this? Well, that's a great question. I'll tell you what has helped me with that. Um, and maybe, I don't know, it might be worth looking up some like what some other people do with this. But I have found that it with stress eating, it took me a while to realize that's what I was doing. I didn't identify it as such. So it's great that you have this insight as to what's going on. Uh, for me, I didn't have that insight. And so I kept putting on weight and I couldn't figure out how. I didn't feel like I was really overeating, but it was food choice. And at times it was portion control. But I think more so it was just food. I'm not a big person. So like, I don't, if you add a couple extra 100 calories a day, like weight pile, I mean, I guess anybody, it piles on quick, but it really shows when you're my height. So I just couldn't figure it out. But then I don't even know what made me figure it out. It was just, I think the realization of something stressful would happen and I would get up. It was like nervous energy. I'd get up to kind of go pace around, but I would go to the kitchen and I would grab, it wasn't even like a lot. Like it might've been, cheese and crackers is a pretty common snack for me. So I might grab like a piece of cheese and like 4 crackers, or like a handful of chips, or I don't know, like 3 pieces of licorice or something like that. And and it was something I'd munch on. And so once I realized, well, I think a big part of it was I used to work at our dining room table that was downstairs, that was right by the kitchen. And then I moved my office upstairs because I got a standing desk. And that was when I realized, oh my gosh, I've been going to the kitchen so much more. So I guess changing my location was one, and then being aware of, even though it was just snacking, that I didn't need to be doing all of the snacking. And so I just really made it a concerted effort to have meals and not a bunch of snacks. And then that really helped, because it's so easy to just kind of not or to kind of gloss over, a handful of crackers here, a handful of grapes there, and then next thing you know, you're stress eating. So if you can kind of, I guess, maybe link up, what are you feeling? Or maybe here's what I think would, because you could do a food journal, but even that, I guess it depends on your style. Like if you are more comfortable doing a food journal, you could do it, but maybe getting in the habit for like the next week of taking a picture of every single thing that you eat. And then maybe at the end of the day, and even if it's little, even if it's like 4 crackers or a handful of grapes or just stuff that you're grabbing out of the kitchen, it doesn't matter. Like every single thing that goes in your mouth. And then at the end of the day, going back and like reviewing your camera roll and thinking about what was going on right before you went to go eat that. And so you can have that visual reminder. So maybe, because then it's kind of interesting because you can start seeing, oh, I had this burrito at lunch. I was hungry. Like, there was nothing else really going on. Like I wasn't feeling anything other than hungry. But you know what? That cookie or the 2 cookies later on that day, yeah, you know what? That was right when I was going to sit down to balance my checkbook and I was stressed out about money. And I went to go grab those 2 cookies. And then you start just thinking back. And then you can start seeing patterns of, okay, this is when I stress eat. And these are all of the different ways that I stress eat. Because I think sometimes stuff like that, it most likely isn't just in one area. It's not just with like thinking about a parent or thinking about, a relationship or money. It can just be stress in general. And so once you start seeing like this is the pattern, then you can start working towards breaking it. And okay, this is the stress that I'm feeling. So instead of getting up and finding my way to the kitchen, what can you do instead? So maybe doing 20 jumping jacks, or maybe, calling a friend, depending on the type of stress or the time of day or whatnot, or taking 5 minutes to journal. And again, like if there's certain patterns, if you're like, okay, I can interrupt this. I tend to stress eat a lot more when I'm at work. If you do, right? Like if you tend to stress eat more when you're at work, then realizing, okay, before I need to kind of be able to discharge some of this stress. And so one of the ways I could do it would be maybe I could take my journal to work, or I could go up and down the stairs 5 times during a 10-minute break I have. Stuff like that, and start coming up with different alternatives and then see if that makes a difference. I hear you. She says, Dana, it's a lot of tiredness that leads me to wanting to treat myself. And I used to also have bulimia and intend to get obsessive over food if I'm not careful. Dietary monitoring can get extra for me. I can totally relate to that. I had a terrible fear of counting calories for that same reason. I'm like, I do not want to start becoming obsessive about this. And the tiredness and treating yourself, I get that too. I think if maybe you can make this shift of it's good to treat yourself, but in other ways. So like treating yourself to like a bubble bath, or to getting lost in a good book or a movie, or these other ways that you can start treating yourself. And this is that disordered eating thinking that is always kind of like a sleeping dog, it can be really difficult to get rid of, and it can be terrifying to even realize that you're still in the same room with it, because it's like, what if this wakes up again, but and maybe starting to address the tiredness too is a big part of it. Meal prep might be a way around that. So if you're like, you know what, I'm just dragging like all week, then maybe setting some time aside on Sunday and coming up with, like some alternatives. So if you are going to kind of snack or you're going to eat, this is what you can kind of gravitate more towards. It's just, my brother calls it better bad choices. So like if you really like ice cream, instead of doing ice cream, like you can do frozen yogurt or sherbet, like these kinds of things. And I'm with you. I'm not a fan of doing things like obsessively, or even like counting. I don't want to even get to the point where I count calories, because that scares me. That's a door that I just don't know if I want to open. Or I don't feel comfortable opening, just because of my own past with eating disorder stuff as well. But like, I don't know. I guess it's like trying to make peace with food and realize that this stress eating is there for a reason. And if you can figure out the reason, then a lot of this, it'll just kind of, in many ways, like resolve itself. It's just bringing your awareness to it. I don't know. How does the idea of like taking pictures of your food and then just going back and thinking about what you were feeling before you were eating it? Does that trigger any of that kind of fear of like obsessiveness, or does that seem like a reasonable thing to do? And Heather says, yeah, it's a good idea, Dana, because you can see the portions you're having as well. Yeah, that's a big thing, because it's easy for people to like for us to misinterpret or misrepresent like what we're actually eating or drinking. Sort of like earlier we were talking about having drinks at a bar, and a person's like, oh, I only had 4 drinks. It's like, well, actually you had 18-ounce pints of beer, so you didn't have 4 drinks. That's what is it, I forget how much alcohol is in a serving, 8 ounces or 12 ounces, maybe 12 ounces. So it's like a beer and a half, like 1.5 per thing. Same. I mean, if you have like an ice cream cone, like it really could be like half a quart or a quart of ice cream on the end of that cone. It's not just an ice cream cone. So portion size, especially in this country, is so off. New Life says, when you told your friends you were going to write a book, did you have people respond that you must put this or that in your book, or that it was about them or not your ideas for your book? I'm trying to think. What did I have? I think it was more, I mean, some people would say, oh, you should really write about X, Y, and Z. Like, you should mention this. People always have, input. But it was kind of the pushback that I felt that I got was more of, and nobody really said this, but I felt it. It was sort of like, who are you to write a book? Was the feeling that I got. And so I just didn't talk about it a lot. Like, I didn't say anything until I did it. And I have published 2 books now and 3 journals, and I've got it's like a lot of books in me still. And I still struggle with telling people that I've published a book. It still doesn't, it's like that imposter syndrome. Like, it just doesn't feel like, that, I don't know, that it's real. But I think that's with any creative process. I think people kind of go through that process, like that identity, like re-understanding your identity of who you are. Like, when I first published my first book, when my first book came out, a friend of mine had introduced me. We were at this like little convention thing for, I don't know, she does food stuff. We were at this like food show convention thing, and she'd introduced me to somebody as her friend, the author. And I had no idea who she was talking about. And I realized she was talking about me. And so that was weird. So it takes a little, there's like this lag time where like how you see yourself has to kind of catch up with how some other people see you. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, there's no shortage of people. Just if you're thinking about writing a book, like, there's no shortage of people out there that are gonna not be supportive of that. Oh, New Life says, yeah. She says, I decided to write a book and I mentioned it to my best friend, but she just said I must put stuff in. She said that you had to put stuff in that has nothing to do with your story. I think that's really common. I'm in this one writers group, and it's mainly fiction writers. And they always are like kind of gritching about stuff like that. So like, man, people will tell you they'll tell you, oh, you should really write my life story, or you should name a character after me, or you should change your story and make it this. Like, people just have opinions about about that. I think it's just part of it. And you just smile and nod, and then you go do your own thing. Okay. Um, okay, so I think oh, that's a good point, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Kevin says he just started a food log, and it is a lot of different things on it. But one of the things is rating your hunger before you eat and your satiation after. So, from a scale of 1 to 10, I think that's insightful. I would agree. I think that's insightful as well. So, Kiara, I'll be curious to see if you do this, kind of what your results are with it, and like what ends up being helpful and how it goes. So keep us posted if you're okay with that. So, okay, with that said, let's go ahead. We'll do our guided meditation thing, and then we will call it a night. And I will see you guys next Tuesday on the daytime live stream. And if not, then I'll see you next Wednesday. So, sorry, the cat isn't here. What are you doing, Kitty Cat? Okay, now he's leaving. Okay, so let's take some time and find a space that is comfortable, whether you are sitting down or laying down. Taking some time to breathe and just getting centered in your body. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Allowing any tension, stress, or anxiety to easily and effortlessly just melt away. Continuing to breathe deeply. Allowing that oxygen to go down to the bases of your lungs. Allowing your lungs to expand completely. Allowing your body to relax, being fully present in this moment. Now turning your attention inward until you can feel your heartbeat. And continuing to breathe. Being fully present in this moment. Now bringing your attention to the top of your forehead, Relaxing your forehead, your eyes, your eyebrows. Relaxing your cheeks and your jaw. And allowing your tongue to fall from the roof of your mouth. And letting your jaw hang open. Releasing all the tension and stress from your face and from your neck. And bringing your attention down to your shoulders. And allowing them to roll back and open, opening your chest, knowing that you are here in this moment and that you are safe, and continuing to breathe. Relaxing your shoulders, your arms, your forearms, your hands, and your fingers. And letting your hands fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Relaxing your stomach. Unclenching any knots you might have in your stomach. Relaxing your hips and allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Relaxing your thighs, your calves, your feet. Uncurling your toes and allowing them to relax. Allowing your feet to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Continuing to breathe. Turning your attention back to your heart until you can start to hear it beating again. Bringing your awareness to all of that wonderful life-giving blood and oxygen that's circulating through your body. Your body is such a magnificent creation. Just taking some time to give thanks for all that it does on a moment-to-moment basis without us even having to ask. Just such a magnificent thing. Take some time to be grateful for everything that is going good and right in our world. Maybe gratitude for a good cup of tea or coffee. Being thankful and grateful if you have access to clean water. That's just such a gift. It truly is. Being thankful and grateful for the health that you do have. Being thankful and grateful for some of the strengths that make you you. Perhaps you're brave, you're strong, you're determined. There is so much that is right about you. being appreciative of all of the strengths that you do have. Now let's visualize a waterfall. Beautiful, sparkling, silver, kind of frothing waterfall that's cascading over some wonderful rocks and down into a tranquil, beautiful turquoise pool below. And as we walk closer to it, you can hear the water as it's coming down over the rocks, splashing into the pool below. And at this point, visualize any residual trauma or pain, stress that you might be carrying as rocks in a backpack. Notice how heavy that backpack is. Knowing that right now you are safe and that it's okay to take that backpack off. It's a lot of weight to carry around. You can place it right over on the side of the rocks. And as soon as we're done having some fun, you can go and pick up that backpack. Or you might even choose to take out a few of the rocks that are weighing it down. Maybe rocks of things that you're ready to let go of. There's no pressure, there's no worry. It just is. It's the backpack. And for now, we're going to go walk underneath this amazing waterfall, knowing that as you walk slowly underneath it, it's going to easily and effortlessly wash away so much of the pain and stress and anxiety that you've been carrying. And on the other side is a lightness of being, joy, happiness, contentment, kind of everything that's good and right with you and with the world. And that this is a world that you also have access to. So as we move forward, feeling that water hit your skin, just feels so amazing as that water splashes all around you, washing any stress and anxiety and pain away. Splashing and bubbling and just flowing easily and effortlessly over you. And as you start to come out on the other side, noticing, oh my goodness, you feel so much lighter and freer and just cleaner. All of this negative, so much of that negativity has been washed off. You might decide that you want to stay on this side of the waterfall for a while. And this is your place. This is a place that you can access at any time. A nice, comfortable, safe space. You can come here and sit, or you could come here with whoever else you want and frolic and play. Or you can come here and just be alone and think. Let's take some time to just acknowledge that there is so much that is right about you. There really, truly is. And that you've come such a long way. That you are dedicated to personal growth, and that is an amazing, beautiful, exciting thing. And that not too many people can say that. And so just acknowledge that this is something that's really unique. You're on a true journey towards self-awareness, and that's powerful. So taking some time to appreciate some of the other strengths that you have. Because there is so much that is right about you. Taking some time to just give yourself a hug, a big energetic hug. Letting yourself know that you are doing a great job, that you are proud of yourself, that you are a warrior, and that you are strong and capable and brave, and that there truly is so much right about you. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and come on back. Okay, guys, thank you so much for being here and for all of your amazing questions and for everything, for being you, for being you. There is truly so much that is right about you. So just lots of love to you guys. As always, you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So I will see you guys next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So take care. Have a wonderful week. Okay, goodbye.